A lot of companies start with saying what they do, who they are, like mentioning their brand. A lot of time you see those dynamic headlines with different words changing that no visitor actually waits enough time to be able to read all the variants. So that's not a great idea. But the main mistake that they make is that thinking that when people land on their website, they instantly want to know who the company is and what it does. And what I actually tell all of the clients that I work with and what I try to do with their copy, it's basically the first thing that you should do on the homepage is to match what people are thinking when they land on the page.
Have you ever thought, how can I have copy that matches what people are thinking when they land on my homepage? Well, in this episode, we chat with Chris Silvestri. He's a conversion copywriter expert. And in this conversation, Chris shares the usability tools that he uses to improve copy and conversion rates, along with his research process. Special thanks to B2B Pod Pros, my company that helps SaaS brands generate high quality leads through B2B podcast sponsorships. If you want to learn more, just head to our website. Okay, let's dive into the conversation with Chris. Chris Silvestri, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, Eric, thanks so much. Great to be here.
Yeah, no, excited to have you. We're going to talk about copy and conversion writing. Here's some of the examples that you've done working with various clients. But before we do that, I want the audience to know a little bit about you. So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Just give me the first thing that pops into your head. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm not great with these, but let's go. Let's see.
Okay, fill in the blank. I grew up in this city, and my favorite thing about this city was blank.
Oh, this is easy. I grew up in Italy, Modena, and my favorite thing about that is food, lasagna.
I don't know if you saw this, but last week, I think it was Slovakia playing Italy in the Euro Cup. And a lot of Slovakian fans had the dry spaghetti and they were breaking it in front of the Italian
I've seen an Instagram post.
Yeah. Oh man, that was funny. Yeah. Okay, next question for you. What is the best advice your mom or dad ever gave you?
Probably from my dad, follow your passion, so my dad was a musician back in Italy. And that probably gave me some confidence in pursuing what I wanted to do rather than what like society established for me.
Good. All right. The next question for you. What is the craziest thing you ever did, either to save money or make money?
Probably to save money, I can say. As the first month that I moved to the UK, I found out this amazing place called Iceland, which if you tell any British person what that is, they cringe. But it's basically one of those like supermarkets where they have everything frozen. So what I decided to do was, okay, I'm going to live for my first few months out of all this stuff, which basically it's £1, $1 meals, everything frozen, lasagna frozen, everything frozen. So I stuffed my freezer with all that stuff. I realized that it's not super healthy maybe, but it allowed me to understand, okay, if like worst case scenario, I can live for £1 a day out of this stuff.
Yeah. No, I've never heard of that store. Man, I wonder if they have frozen lattes. Yeah. I was in London. Yeah. I was there like 2 or 3 months ago and I got a latte and it was like £5. And for me, I was like, shit, that's $7, $8. Yeah. You go broke if you get 2 lattes a day. Oh man, I'm with you on that. I can buy a frozen dinner and take it back to the hotel and see if they can reheat it for me.
Yeah. And crazy thing, like they even deliver stuff to your home. So if you don't want to carry your bag, boom, get stuff delivered.
Okay, last rapid fire question for you. What is a meal that your partner or maybe a good friend or somebody close to you really enjoys, but you hate it? You can't stand it.
Probably licorice. So licorice is probably the only thing that I hate. Yeah, my mom, she's from Holland, so she goes crazy for like candies, and I hate it. Like it's the only thing that I cannot stand.
I didn't know the Dutch like licorice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. When I first had it, I'm like, who in the hell eats this crap? Oh, it just that taste. It's
And did you try sambuca? So sambuca's gonna have as the same kind of flavor taste profile. I ate it.
No. The Dutch are not really well known for their cuisine. Between the Italian meals versus the Dutch meals, I'll take 100% the Italian meals all day.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Hey, let's talk a little bit about copywriting. What are some common mistakes that you see B2B companies make with their website copy, and how do you address those mistakes?
Yes, some of the main ones that come to mind are around their homepage copy, because that's the first thing that people see when they land on your website. And the biggest mistake that I see comes when it comes to writing your value proposition. So the first thing that you see on the page, typically the above the fold section, a lot of companies start with saying what they do, who they are, like mentioning their brand. A lot of time you see those dynamic headlines with different words changing that no visitor actually waits enough time to be able to read all the variants. So that's not a great idea. But the main mistake that they make is that thinking that when people land on their website, they instantly want to know who the company is and what it does. And what I actually tell all of the clients that I work with and what I try to do with their copy, it's basically the first thing that you should do on the homepage is to match what people are thinking when they land on the page. Because everyone lands on the page with, if they are your target clients, customers, they land on your homepage with expectations, with problems that they're thinking about, with goals that they want to achieve, right? So that's the first thing that you should actually do on the page, which is match what they're thinking.
Okay.
Second, it's probably trying to speak to one single person on that homepage rather than trying to match all the different personas that you are solving for, that you're helping. And you can do it like a lot of people would think has the homepage as a landing page, which is a page where you send traffic to from ads, from different sources that are typically more segmented. So you can speak to one single person on a landing page.
Yeah.
When on the homepage, it's much better to try to speak to all the different types of decision makers, especially if you're in B2B, you have buying committees. So you have to try and speak to the different pain points, and you can do it because the homepage should actually be a place where they understand, okay, this is for me. You do it this way, which is better, unique, different. And then the goal is to send them to individual pages that basically show them and explain how you solve their specific pain points, or with the ultimate goal or signing up, converting. So that's the second one.
I was thinking maybe a fun exercise here. I don't know if you've ever been to my website. I've got a website, b2bpodpros.com.
Yeah, let me check.
If you want to check it out, b2bpodpros.com. I'm basically helping SaaS brands grow their reach by reaching new audiences through B2B podcasters, through B2B podcast advertising and sponsorships. And so I'm wondering if you have any feedback for my headline copy. I think it speaks to the overall general population of visitors who are coming to my site, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't want anybody to be confused. So let me know. Grade me. Is it an A, a B, a C, a D, an F? Feel free.
Yeah.
You let me know. Be candid. What do you think?
Okay, I'm on it now, looking at the homepage. It says, we help SaaS marketers connect with their target audience via reputable B2B podcasters, raise awareness, save 10 plus hours a week, and generate high quality leads with our Done For You podcast and campaign management service for SaaS brands. So I like it. First thing I have to say that I like it, that I understand what this is. But at the same time, as I was mentioning before, you are also helping me with, if I was your target audience, what I would be thinking was, I want to connect with these people. I want to reach the target audience. I'm still not sure how. So you basically connect the two factors, which is good. SaaS marketers, probably the only thing that I would try to improve or test at least would be, rather than speaking from a we do X, Y, Z standpoint, just write the copy as if you were like literally writing their thought process. So you could basically just say, connect with your target audience via reputable B2B podcasters. So like simplest change that you can make. And then you could include SaaS marketers if you wanted to help them identify with it in the subhead. So that the main ones, it's the message is a bit clearer and more impactful. But yeah, overall, first impression, it's pretty clear. And also I like down the page that you have there's a difference between the spray and pray method and a strategic method. So you help me understand, okay, this is the problem, help me understand it, how we contribute. But yeah, the other thing, maybe, other piece of advice is, since you are starting with the problem, like the difference between these two different approaches, one thing that you could test would be to start with the problem right up front in the headline, rather than giving them the solution right away. So if you think that they need education on understanding the problem and the difference between these two approaches, maybe another approach that you can take for the page is to start with the problem at the top and then introduce the solution after. But yeah, overall, solid 7, 8 out of 10, I would say, if I could give you a rating.
All right. I got my arms up like Rocky here. Now, that wasn't the first try. There's been many different iterations and different copy changes that I've made. So I've been at this for probably 7 or 8 months now. And it's good to hear a professional copywriter say that, hey, it's clear. I understand what it does. And that's the main thing that I'm going for. All right. Nice. Good. Okay. Now, tell us about your research process. Are there any methods that you use to understand the psychology of the target audience when you're helping out a client?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do is also a combination of messaging strategy, conversion copywriting, and also UX design. So before going full-time on conversion copywriting, I worked for 2 years at a design branding agency, but also we later turned into a usability testing startup. So for people who don't know, usability testing, there are a couple of platforms that do it, but you can do it also in person. It's basically having someone that it's typically in your target audience looking at your copy, website, marketing materials, and basically recording their thought process as they look through it. They tell you, okay, this resonates, I'm not entirely clear on what this means. And you can basically understand why people might not be converting on your website by looking at these user testing. The thing is, a lot of user testing, typically it's made for product design, so app design, right? So to understand how to improve the flow inside an app, to understand how people use the app to make it more user-friendly. But there's also, with conversion copywriting, the side of user testing that's basically designed to help you understand how people think, what's their thought process as they read your copy. And so I worked at this agency and I've learned all that I needed to know about UX design, and I tried to integrate it into the copywriting work that I do. So a lot of my research involves in running these usability testing studies as well, but also all the common research methodologies that you see in copywriting. So I typically divide it into 3 separate areas. So there's the internal research, which is when I interview my client, their team. So it's typically interviewing the founder, marketing, product teams, support, and sales. So I try to have those conversations to understand what's happening inside, and also if everyone's aligned internally. And I might also jump into customer support chats just to see how they are interacting with customers. Then the second area, it's the customer side of the equation, which I also divide into the prospect side. So people who might be the target audience but are still not customers, and the customer side, so that you get the before and after picture of that transformation that needs to happen. And those can be customer interviews, surveys, reading reviews of the product or the service online, and analyzing them for different themes, values that people list. The third area is the market side. So looking at competitors, looking at their messaging, positioning, what their claims are, and what kind of messaging we should maybe steer clear of, or maybe include as well if we see that it's important for the audience. And also looking at reviews of competitors. So looking at what people appreciate or don't like about competitor solutions. With these 3, you basically get like a pretty accurate picture of the themes that you should include in the copy, what kind of pain points, motivations, desired outcomes that you need to address. and also how to lay out the copy, which is another important aspect that comes from that UX research. Because I think it's not only the language they use, but also the flow, the visual hierarchy they use for the website. That's important. How people consume the page, I think, is as important as the messaging that you use.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because of your design background. I was wondering, is there a lot of research into, for example, the type of font that is actually used for the copy? Do you spend a lot of time on that? Does that matter?
I don't spend a lot of time on the specific fonts just because my final product with my work, it's basically wireframes that are non-branded, non-designed. So I try to keep them as simple as possible so that my clients focus on the actual copy and the messaging that we use to understand it first before sending it to a designer. But I can say that if it's not the font that I pay attention to, it's the messaging and visual hierarchy. So it's important to follow the specific sequence of how people read and consume the copy, right? So if you have an H1 headline and then a subhead and then different crossheads, H3 with their own paragraphs, it's important that people read them the way that I designed them because that's what the research dictated. So yeah, that's probably the thing that I would pay attention to. It's not the fonts, it's the hierarchy and the priority.
Okay, so you have your research methods, and let's say you now understand a little bit more about not just the brand, but from the founder perspective, also from the psychological standpoint of the target audience. How do you validate that before you do a campaign or after you launch a campaign, just to make sure that it's resonating with the audience? Can you share maybe there's some different tools that you use, or just what's your approach to this?
Yeah, so there are a couple of tools. So you could test copy directly on the wireframe. So even before designing anything finalized, which is pretty good because it's not expensive and it's pretty fast. And the way you could do it would be to either have other interviews with your customer base. So like clearly like having Zoom calls basically with them, showing them the page and asking them questions on it and see how they consume it. The other option is 5-second tests, which there are other, like some of those usability testing platforms allow you to do those, which is basically showing a certain audience, which you try to make as close as possible to your own target audience. You basically have them look at your value proposition. It's typically just a value proposition because it's focused on clarifying your main messaging angle or positioning. So you show them the first headline that you have on the page, like the one we talked about for your website, for 5 seconds. And after the 5 seconds, they basically have to close the page and tell you what they think and what they remembered about that copy. So it gives you an idea of, okay, this was clear. Maybe this specific word is not clear enough. I need to understand. I need to adjust it. So that's another test that you could do before launching.
Okay.
There are, especially for B2B, it's quite hard to do usability testing because when you are writing to, CFOs, CMOs, or IT people, it's hard to find in those usability testing platforms the audience that's as close as possible to them, just because these people are busy and they're not working on as testers on usability testing platforms. So there are a couple of specialized platforms for this. One, it's Winter, Winter, and it's a pretty well-known platform in B2B because they recruit some of these B2B people to do these tests. The only downside is that it's quite expensive just because you have to pay some of those execs to do these tests. But if you want to do one test every once in a while, it's pretty indicative and you don't need a lot of people to test. So these are probably the main methods. Another one, which if you design the page and launch it live, then a quick test that you can start setting up, it's installing Hotjar. Hotjar is one of the platforms, but basically heat maps.
Yeah.
So those heat maps that let you track and see where people click, how they move on the page. And you can also record actual recordings of people using the website. So with those, if you typically let it run for 1 or 2 weeks and you have substantial traffic, or you can send some traffic to it for the test, you can basically start seeing how people consume the page, where they click, what they read, typically because they hover with the mouse on specific pieces of copy. So you can get an idea of what they pay attention to at least. And yeah, so these are probably the main types of testing. One that I'm experimenting with still, and it can be a hot take, but so far I found it pretty valuable, which is testing with AI. So a lot people are starting to call this synthetic research. Another way that I call it, it's empathy engineering, which I'm also writing a bit about lately, which is basically, so imagine this. So AI models like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, all those large language models, they basically have been trained with all the human knowledge on the internet, right? So even posts on Reddit, where a lot of people write very personal stuff. So these language models know a lot of stuff. So my thought process was, okay, these kind of know how we humans think in a way. So what if I give them all the research that I conducted for my clients, so that we basically restrict the field of information that they need to look at, and they also know more about the product, about the audience. And then with all that, I instruct the language model to impersonate my customer and think as if they were the customer, right? So basically, I have the AI wear my customer's shoes. And then I basically just ask them questions. I show them the copy that I write and tell me what it thinks about it. So I've been trying with it, especially if you have models that you can feed a lot of information to. A good one is Gemini 1.5, which is a super large context window, which is like the amount of information that you can give it. And it's been working pretty well. I have to say, I've been trying for some clients a couple of different personas, and I've been trying to feed it like different types of alternatives of headlines and copy. And the feedback that it actually gives me is pretty close to what an actual customer would tell me. So it's a bit of more indirect approach to writing copy, because I don't have it write the copy for me yet. At least it's not as good, but it can inform the copy that you write, because it's basically part of the research process. And it can also be a super cheap and fast way to test, because you're not paying anything except the membership to the subscription to the AI, and it gives you results instantly. Basically.
Interesting. Now, let's just say you're a B2B marketer, you're working at a SaaS startup. There's only like maybe at the most 3 marketers on the team. You've got a lot of different plates that you're juggling, and you want to do some testing, and you can only use one tool, and you just don't have a lot of time to spend on that tool. Which tool would you recommend for that person?
Yeah, so I would probably go first usability testing, because it's probably the fastest one of realistic tools if you can't interview your customers. If you have 2 to 3 weeks and already have customers, I would definitely go with just customer interviews, because the qualitative insights that they give you, it's much worth the time and kind of the effort that it takes you, rather than sending surveys with a couple of short answers or checkboxes. So customer interviews, I'll probably go with those. Second, usability testing. And third, if you don't even have customers and you're an early stage startup, then I would try the AI approach that I just went through.
Yeah. For the usability testing, which tool do you like?
There is usertesting.com is the biggest one, but recently they are moving towards enterprise. So there's another one which is called the Usability Hub, but I think they changed name. And now they are called, but yeah, if you search for Usability Hub, you should find it. There's another one that I've used. It's called User Feel. And it's also pretty simple and not super expensive. So that's good.
Good. All right. There you got it. All right. One last question for you. Can you give us some examples where you improved the conversion rates and the copy for a few different clients? Do you remember some of the copy that you changed before and after?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was one example. It was a platform for basically Instagram growth. And we didn't really only improve the copy. So we wrote the copy for the whole website, but they also had a super complex pricing structure. So they had, 8 different tiers, and the plan names weren't really clear. They were also like super redundant. So it basically, imagine like you have 8 tiers, and basically from one tiers to the other is basically the same increase in features, numbers. So there wasn't really a reason for people to choose one or the other based on their needs, pain points. the big win of that project was also, by doing that research that I walked you through, was also understanding, okay, which pricing tiers and plans would make more sense for people to use, and how do we message them, right? So through the copy. So we basically moved, I think, from those 8 tiers down to 3, with one that was like an add-on or an upsell. So that was good. I think that increased conversion by itself by 10-15%. And also, the biggest thing in messaging there was to turn that experience, rather than it was very transactional, just because people were paying for like increasing growth on those platforms. It was a mix of a service, a mix of AI. So it was very transactional. What we turned that into more with the messaging and copy was like, we understood that people, these kind of wannabe influencers, wanted to have some guidance, be on a journey through to their growth as well, and learn more about how to do it as well. So we basically turned the copy into a story, a journey that carried them through their landing on the page and understanding the service, and then understanding how that service moved them through that transformation, the journey to becoming a potential influencer. So that was one of the big changes that we made.
Okay. All right. All right. That the first one reminds me of the study where I think people were shopping in a grocery store and they had 20 different samples of jam or jelly to try, but they were just overloaded with too many choices and they didn't really find one that they really enjoyed. Whereas another stand only had 3 jams and people they found, oh, I really like this jam. The sample size was much smaller, but they found a lot more enjoyment from that. All right. Chris, listen, thanks so much for coming on to the show. Where can people learn more about you?
So I typically write on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, but not so much lately. And on my website, conversionalchemy.net, I have a newsletter where you can learn copywriting in 5 minutes a week. And I also have a podcast. Especially if you are in B2B SaaS, that's my main audience, but you can also learn a lot from other copywriting pros, SEOs, marketers in general. So that's a good resource if you want to.
All right. I'll put links to his LinkedIn profile and the website in the show notes. And for those listening, if you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button. That's how we grow. Tell others about it. And until next week, this is Eric signing off. Chris, wish you a great trip back to Italy for the summer for vacation from the UK. And again, thanks for coming on. We'll chat later. Cheers.
Thanks, Eric. Just later.